Buckle your seatbelt. It's time for another episode of the Prepper Recon Podcast. Whether your plan is to bug out or bug in, CampingSurvival.com has all of your preparedness needs, including fish antibiotics, long-term storage food, and water filters. Use coupon code PREPPERRECON for 5% off your order at CampingSurvival.com.
Get prepared before disaster strikes. PrepperRecon.com offers MOLLE-compatible individual first aid kits for your home, auto, or bug-out bag. These kits have everything you need to address a traumatic injury, including an Israeli battle dressing, quick clot, EMT shears, suture kit, steri strips, tourniquet, tough strip bandages, and so much more. $99 includes shipping. Go to PrepperRecon.com and click the Store tab at the top of the home page. Order today before it's too late.
Hi, Preppers and Patriots. This is the second half of my interview with the Sargent from AmericanPreppersOnline.com. Enjoy the show. And I like what you said about the SOS emergency food bars. Those things, I don't think they taste like much. They're just kind of like flour and sugar and some stuff like that. It's basically like a cookie, but it'll keep you alive and it'll give you energy. It's got fat in it. It's carbs and it'll keep you going. And I think those things do really well in the heat too, because a lot of times, you know, if it's something you're keeping in the car, that's something that's getting really hot every single day when the sun's baking on it, when it's sitting out in the parking lot of your job or your driveway or whatever. So whatever you're going to keep in there for food, it needs to be able to handle the heat. And I think those things do really well in the heat, and other stuff maybe not so much.
Exactly. That's why I was saying a while ago about you need to check the expiration date on any food you put in there. So it's really, really important.
And do I need to think about my particular climate and the distance that I have to travel from home to work? What are some of the variables that are going to determine how I need to personalize my get-home bag?
If you live in the South like I do, then if you have to walk a long distance, some things are going to make the trip more difficult. Are mosquitoes, bugs, heat, humidity, things like that. So you're going to want to bring, as far as sleeping, if you have to sleep at night, you're going to want something lightweight. You're going to want a mosquito net. Now, by the same token, if you're farther up north, or like Idaho or northern Utah or any of that, at night when the sun goes down, the temperature drops pretty drastically in most cases. And in those type of climates, you're going to need to have a good warm bag with you. Mosquitoes aren't that big of a problem there, or at least I haven't seen them to be. But yeah, you need to have a good blanket. You need to have whatever it takes to stay warm. If you got an old pair of snowshoes and it's in the middle of the winter, throw those in the back. If you don't need them, you can always leave them. But it's better to have the option than not.
And then if you live in a seasonal climate, do you need to make adjustments to your bag for, okay, summer's rolling around, I need to make sure I've either got more water or a higher capacity container for whatever type of filter I'm using, or winter's rolling around, I need to put up a thicker blanket and maybe some fire starting materials in there. Do you think that folks should, is there a set schedule that you think they should have for making those adjustments, and do you think they should make those adjustments?
Well, that's one of the reasons I do. I recommend going through your bag every 3 months. Weather changes roughly in most places around every 3 months. It gives you an opportunity to say, you know what? Yeah, it's really hot. I'm not going to need this sweater for the next couple of months. You can pull it out. Maybe you want to throw something else in there, like a lightweight sheet or something. Or if it's in the winter, then you need to add a coat. You need to add gloves. You need to add a toboggan, for your head. You need something and a way to stay warm. You're also going to want to add more fire starting material to your bag. I mean, it's one thing if you're in the South and you're building a fire for light and to keep the bugs away, but it's a completely different story when you're up north and it's really cold.
And one of the coolest things I've ever seen for being able to start a fire, even when it's damp or wet outside, is just a cotton ball. And you get an old candle that's leftover candle, and you dip that cotton ball in that candle, and this thing is just the perfect fire starter. And you can keep it in one of those little Altoid tins or something like that, and you get ready, and it's time to make it. Just put a rubber band around that Altoid with a couple of lighters or your fire starting flint or whatever you use.
One of the best fire starting things I found is a cotton ball with Vaseline.
Vaseline, yeah, that's great too.
Yeah, you can take a little Ziploc bag, put some cotton balls in there, put in some Vaseline, rub them around real good, and just shove that down in the corner. These things, you take them out, you go to start a fire with them, set them on the ground, you put your kindling and stuff around it, and you can take a flint rod, and with just a couple of strikes, you have a fire going. It catches very, very easily. And these things will burn for several minutes, which gives you plenty of time to get your kindling going and build you a nice warm fire for if you're up north. You don't have to worry about water so much because the Vaseline in it actually helps make them a little waterproof.
And then we were talking about some of the threats that could require you to have a get-home bag. And one of the things we talked about the EMP. Another thing that I think that there's more people in America that are exposed to this risk than are probably aware of it. But earthquakes, we've certainly seen the ring of fire. It's been really, really heating up. In the past few weeks, we've had a 7.8 in Ecuador, which killed hundreds of people. Mexico had a big, massive eruption. They had several volcanoes that went off. There was a 7.0 in southern Japan. And this is all just within about the past 6 weeks. And now our listeners in California, the folks that live in Washington along the Cascadia Fault, a lot of those folks are very, very aware of what type of risks they have from seismic activities. But I think maybe sometimes the folks that live around the New Madrid Fault in Kentucky and Tennessee and Missouri, the people that are around the eastern Tennessee seismic zone, and folks that in South Carolina, there's a big fault zone in South Carolina. I think a lot of these folks are maybe sometimes don't think about the risks that they can have from a big quake because they haven't had a big one in those areas for a little while. But when those big shakers come through, they can take out bridges. They can take out overpasses. So if there's an overpass, which it's very, very difficult to get on or off a highway if there's no overpass, if that happens to collapse. So that's something that folks, I think they don't think about as much. And I think that's a really, really important reason to have a get-home bag. Would you agree? Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely. Any emergency that could stop you from getting home by normal means is definitely a good reason to have a get-home bag. It's critical. I mean, you have to stop and think about it. This can actually save your life. There are so many things that could go wrong that we just don't think about during the normal course of the day. I mean, what if, like you said, the earthquake hits and the bridges fall and the ground opens up? I mean, the way you plan to get home may suddenly get a whole lot longer. So,
absolutely. And we talked about bridges and overpasses collapsing, but even if there's no bridge, even if there's no overpass, roads just buckle and crack. And like you said, the ground just opens up. So, you don't even have to have a bridge or overpass in between your home and your work for the roads to suddenly become inaccessible. And I guess maybe that brings up another good point. What do you think about a good first aid kit? Is that something we should have in there?
Absolutely. A good first aid kit is essential. In fact, I not only carry a first aid kit in mine, I also keep a belt in my car with a trauma kit on it, a small trauma kit on it. Those are also good to have. You break a leg, you do something that's a little more than a scratch or a burn, you may need some of the things in the trauma kit as well. But a good first aid kit is a must. They got a lot of good ones out there. They're not that big. They don't take up that much room, and they're not heavy. So, absolutely, people need to have those in their kit.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. The dollar's lost over 90% of its purchasing power since 1971. Silver, on the other hand, has proven to be a very stable form of wealth preservation over the years. And where do you buy silver? Silver.com, of course. Silver.com offers fantastic prices on gold and silver. Check out Silver.com today. Ready Made Resources is a trusted name in the prepper community because they've been around for 18 years. They offer great prices on night vision, water filtration, long-term storage food, solar energy components, and provide free technical service. Get ready for an uncertain future at ReadyMadeResources.com. We just passed the 3rd anniversary of the Prepper Recon podcast, and it couldn't have happened without you. To say thanks, I want to send you a free PDF copy of the 7-Step Survival Plan. It's a basic blueprint that will help you to prioritize your efforts and make sure you're not missing any important areas of prepping. To get your free copy, simply go to PrepperRecon.com and click the 7-Step Survival Plan free PDF banner that's directly under the menu bar at the top of the homepage. Thanks again for 3 great years of the Prepper Recon podcast. There's some upgrades that we want to think about if we're going for an extended road trip, let's say, 200 miles or 300 miles, 500 miles.
In a case like that, you're going to want to probably have a good atlas as well as local maps, if at all possible. When you know you're going out of town, let's say, and on a business trip or whatever, before you go, take the time to get maps of the area between your house and where you're heading. Look at the roads, look at the hills, look at where the rivers are. All of these things will be obstacles when you start coming back home. So you're going to want to have a good atlas with you because they'll show you things that you might not see otherwise. Something else that you're going to want to consider if you're that far away from home is you're probably going to want to have a weapon with you. I know some people don't like weapons, but I think in a case like that, and like, let's say in the case of an EMP, just simply because we've been using that example, they're saying that within 72 hours, people are going to figure out there's no law to stop them. So they're going to be raising havoc. You need a way to defend yourself and anyone that's with you. I have a little 9mm I keep in my get-home bag. It's a necessary evil. But, a good way to defend yourself, a good flashlight, a good water filter, good first aid kit. These are all things. And another good, something else you might want to consider, ham radio. Now, when I say ham radio, I'm talking about what they call handy talk. There are several of them on the market. I know Bofang makes one it's a little 5-watt, what most people would call a walkie-talkie. All right, they sell for about $30 right now. And if you have one and you know how to use it, then you can actually get in touch with people while you're walking and find out what's going on down the road from you if there's other people down there. Ham operators will be up no matter what the emergency is shortly after it happens. You can bank on that. In fact, when the tornado wiped out that city in Missouri, within 10 minutes of the disaster, a ham radio operator got out there, hooked the wire to an old lawn chair and threw it up in a tree. We was using that for an antenna and was directing the emergency services as they came into the area.
No joke. That's awesome.
So, I mean, they're going to be out there. And being able to talk to these people, can save your life. Find out that no, don't go that way. They've got a lot of fires, or they got a gas leak over there. You might want to take a different route, or this bridge is out, or those power lines are down. This area is flooded. It's something you're going to want to need to have with you. It'll also give you a chance to find out what's going on down the road as far as safety goes. Is there any trouble down the road that I need to be aware of? Is there a camp along the way that's been set up, an emergency place, where I can stop and get some supplies? These are the kind of things you need to know in any emergency. And a ham radio is the best way to do it, I think.
You said 72 hours before folks started realizing that they can get away with anything, and that might be super optimistic. I watched a documentary about the blackout in New York in the 70s, and it was almost instantaneous. I would hope that most parts of the country wouldn't be quite that bad. But, of course, you're always going to have pockets. You're going to have pockets that are going to break down immediately. And then I think you're going to have other areas where you probably will have about 72 hours before things really, really start to deteriorate to complete lawlessness. So I think 72 hours is probably your best case scenario, and 72 seconds is probably the worst. So it'll be a gauge depending on where you're at.
Well, when I said that, I was thinking more of walking along country roads.
Right, yes. Yep.
As far as the big cities goes, I have a tendency like you to believe that it won't take but an hour or two at the most.
Right.
Once they figure out that they can do what they want with no repercussions, it's going to be open season.
And we've been talking a lot about EMPs. One of the things that's not going to work after an EMP is a credit card. What about cash? Are there some instances where, and I think that you probably will be able to use cash for about the first 72 hours before folks start to come to realize that there's not going to be a whole lot to buy with it. But I think in that first 3 days, I think that be it misplaced value, I think that folks are still going to place value on that paper currency for those first 3 days.
I agree, but the way I see it is that if in the event of an EMP, what you're going to want to do is you want to get rid of that, use that cash, get rid of it as fast as you can. Find a store that maybe they're saying we're not open, the registers won't work. Show them your hand. I've got cash. 9 times out of 10, I imagine they'll let you in because they can do that without a register.
Yeah,
you want to buy as many supplies as you can, as quickly as you can, because within 72 hours, that money's not going to be worth a darn.
Right, and then something else for folks to think about. I was in Fort Lauderdale after Hurricane Wilma came through, and we went for over a week with no power, and the big stores, the Krogers, the Publix, the Walmarts, all those places were closed until the power came back on. But the little mom and pop stores, they would open up, and usually there was a guy that would work the door, and he'd let 2 or 3 people in at a time, so there was no looting or stealing or anything like that going on. They had candles going in, and somebody behind the register that was taking cash, and they would let you know before you went in, cash only, and if you had cash, they'd let you go in, and they would sell you stuff. So in that instance, think about where those little bodegas are and look for those over the big chain places like the Walmarts and the Publix, because those places are probably going to be less likely to open up than somewhere that's independently owned, because the independently owned places, they'd like to continue to make money, and they'd probably like to get rid of a lot of their inventory that may be subject to spoiling. So that's another good thing to think, because they have to think rationally, unlike a mega corporation that they just have a rule book and nothing else matters.
Absolutely. Mom and pop stores, convenience stores, these are the kind of places you're going to want to look at. Do not try to go to any of the Walmarts. Do not try to go to any of the major food store chain stores, because that's where the crowds are going to be, and they're going to be unruly, and it will get ugly. That's not some place you want to be when that happens. So, yeah, I'd try to avoid those, and like you said, stay with the mom-and-pop places, the convenience stores, and basically try to avoid many of the crowds.
And maybe folks that have a really long, they regularly make long road trips where they travel more than 100 miles, once or twice a month or more. What about a folding bike? Is that a good investment for somebody that's in that situation that travels that much regularly?
Oh, absolutely. If you're stuck on the side of the road, and you have a long way to go on foot, a bicycle will make all the difference in the world. You'll travel a whole lot farther in one day on a bicycle than you will on foot. If you have to rent one or whatever it takes, if you're a long way from home, by all means, do everything you can to try to get your hands on a bike. You make all the difference in the world. And
so that might be another good idea to, I like to have a little emergency money on me anyway. But let's say you got $500 in your wallet that, and folks are still putting value on that, and you're 500 miles away from home. You're probably looking at a month to walk that. But if you could just give that $500 to somebody they've never thought about an EMP, and they can't get any money out of their credit card machine or their ATM machine, and nobody's taking credit cards, they're relatively close to their home. They might be very happy to give you their $150 or $200 bike for $500.
Oh yeah. In fact, most of them, I would imagine in those circumstances, would sell it to you for a lot less than that. If they have no money and there's no power and nobody is selling anything with debit cards, then they'll be desperate. They'll sell you that bike for hardly nothing, I would imagine. But again, the thing is we've got to try to keep our humanity to all this.
Absolutely.
And you wouldn't want to take advantage of somebody. I mean, be fair. If you're going to buy a bike for somebody, be fair about it, because that person has to survive too.
Yeah, and it would be a really a win-win situation if you were a long way from home and they had a bike and they were close to home, but they needed cash to get some supplies before all the supplies were gone. That'd be a win-win situation where it'd be a game changer for you, because it would change your 1 month trek home to saw it down to maybe a week. So that's really, really big for you, and it'd be great for the other person to give them a little more time.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you can win-win, that's great. It's important to get home safely and quickly so that you can take care of the people that you have at home that you care about. And if you can find a way to do that better. Another option, if you live on a river or close to a river, and you happen to be upstream somewhere, you might want to consider taking a boat. I know I've talked to several people who said, you know what, I just live down the river, so I'm just going to give me a little boat, get out on the river and paddle home. Well, that's an option, I guess.
Be a lot less congestion and a lot less civil unrest, I would imagine, on the river.
Absolutely. And that's something you need to be concerned about, too. When you're trying to get home, you need to try to avoid crowds of places where a lot of people, and the roads may be completely congested, completely stopped up. Look for bike trails. Look for walking paths. Another option is a railroad track. Now, I'm not saying go out and walk down a railroad track during regular times, but let's say it was an EMP or something like that, then that would make a great option. You'd have less congestion. You'd be able to see what's ahead of you, and you wouldn't have to worry about people sneaking up on you so much.
And then you said a pistol's a good thing for a get-home bag if you have a short distance. If you're anticipating having a longer distance, does it make sense to have a long gun? And if so, what would you recommend?
Well, I absolutely agree with you there 100%. For when I go on trips, I do have a long gun I bring. I bring my AR with a folding stock. It fits in my bag very nicely. And that way I don't have to advertise that I have it. But at the same time, when things start turning bad, I want to be able to have something to pull out of my bag, put around my neck, and be ready for it when it does get there. It also helps if you're traveling a long ways. You could use it to maybe kill some game D. So, yeah, there are tons of good reasons to have a long rifle with you.
Yeah, and then there's the AKs, and they've got there's popular models that are pretty accessible and already ready to go, and doesn't require any extra things to be put on, to have the underfolder stock, which is also, folds up, gets pretty small, and then like yours, the fold out, you can have a full stock if you need it to take longer shots. But now for folks that maybe don't have the $500 or $600 to get into an AK or an AR, what about maybe like a Mossberg? I think you can get the little Maverick 88s for less than $200. Is that a good option for a long gun for get home kits?
Oh, sure. But something, if they're not used to shooting much, they're not used to shooting rifles and long guns, then another good option is the Mossberg 500 shotgun. It's a short-barreled shotgun. It'll fit in your pack. And if you're using double-aught buck, you're much more likely to hit your target with it than you are with a rifle. Now, granted, it doesn't have the range of a long rifle, but chances are, if you're shooting, you're probably going to be shooting up close in those situations, I would think, anyway. You come around the corner and someone's standing there or something like that. I suppose it could be situations where they're shooting at you from a long way away, but I think most of your fight is going to be fairly close, and in that case, if you're not used to shooting, a shotgun is definitely the best way to go, in my opinion.
Well, I think that's really, really good advice, Sargent. It's just a lot of great stuff you've given us to think about. Can you tell us one more time where folks can go to find your writings and, of course, your the videos and other things that you post?
Sure. It's www.americanpreppersonline, and we post new post every week, and I think you'll enjoy it.
Well, Sarge, we sure appreciate you taking time to talk to us on the show today, and thanks for being part of the solution.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
In 7 Cows, Ugly and Gaunt, Book 1, Behold Darkness and Sorrow, Daniel Walker begins having prophetic dreams about the judgment coming upon America for rejecting God's word. Through one of his dreams, Daniel learns of an imminent threat of an electromagnetic pulse attack, sending the country into a technological dark age. If they want to live, Daniel and his friends must focus on faith, wits, and preparation to be ready before the lights go out. Buy your copy of 7 Cows, Ugly and Gaunt, Book 1, Behold Darkness and Sorrow, by best-selling author Mark Goodwin, in paperback, Kindle, or audio edition from Amazon.com today.